In this video, I will be acting as though the UFC has given me the opportunity to rearrange and rank their light heavyweight top 15. Now, the top 15 in the UFC is in shambles. It is a mess. There's been vacated championships for however many years now, starting with Jon Jones, then Yuri Prochazka, and then Jamal Hill. However, on the UFC's official website, Jamal Hill is still listed as the champion. So that is who we're going to put as in the championship spot. So you will not find Jamal Hill anywhere else on the list. He's the champion at least until UFC 295 when Alex Pereira takes on Yuri Prochazka for the vacant light heavyweight championship. Now, I'm going to be breaking these rankings down. I'm going to give you my explanation as to why I believe each fighter should be where they are. And then I'm also going to kind of give you some clarity as to why they maybe aren't there in the rankings in real life. So this is going to be my ranking. I am 138 MMA, if you haven't noticed that already, and I'm here to break this down for you. Let's start with number 15. Now, be sure to watch these in order for full explanations, but if you're just a party pooper, feel free to skip to the end of the video where I will have all of the rankings already placed in. But we're going to break these down. Now, starting at number 15, I have Ryan Spann, and I understand the UFC has him ranked much higher. For me, the reason Ryan Spann is number 15 is because Ryan Spann is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. His wins are over guys that are far out of the rankings, where his losses are to anybody ranked anywhere. So for me, at least for me, you can't give Ryan Spann a very high spot. They do have Dominic Reyes as a ranked fighter in the UFC, so I guess that's probably why Ryan Spann is still up there, but Dominic Reyes shouldn't be in the rankings at this point. It's unfortunate. He's just been on a downhill slide, but Ryan Spann for me is number 15. He's lost Anthony Smith twice in his last 5 fights. Anthony Smith will be on the ranking somewhere, but he's not number 1. He's not the champion. So for me, Ryan Spann falls in at number 15 until he can string together another couple of wins or beat somebody ranked higher than him in the rankings. Let me know if you disagree in the comments below. I'd love to hear that for all of my picks here. If you disagree, maybe put your own personal rankings in the comments below. I do appreciate it very much. And let's go to the next. For me next, I've got Carlos Ulberg. Now, I wouldn't be mad if you flipped number 14 and 15 around. I could understand that just because Ryan Spann has been higher in the rankings, things like that. But Carlos Ulberg is coming in with a 5-fight winning streak where he's finished pretty much everyone. In fact, his last fight kind of both went to decision and was a submission because the fight went to decision, but they realized that his opponent had tapped out prior. So somehow it was a submission, but you know what I mean. So Carlos Ulberg, I put him at 14 just because of that 5-fight winning streak over pretty good, just slightly outside the rankings level of competition. So for me, that's where he sits, but I'm not entirely mad if you switch those two. Let's move on to 13. Falling in my number 13 spot, we've got Dustin Jacoby. Now, for Dustin Jacoby, the reason I have him here, he tends to beat anybody down here, right? Anybody outside the rank. This is outside the rankings, if you didn't know this. He beats anybody outside the rankings. And he's had a couple of losses, whether they're justified or not. There's one coming up we'll talk about. But anybody up here that seems to be able to beat him, they kind of just keep him right here, right? So I've got Dustin Jacoby at number 13. Now, pretty soon he's got a matchup coming up with Alonzo Menafield. And we're going to go over that in a little bit and explain kind of how that's going to go. But for Dustin Jacoby, if he is able to beat Alonzo Menafield, I think that would justify a move up in the spot. However, if he loses to that, we're going to see some adjustments. But that's coming up pretty soon. We're getting some clarity in the division now. We've got 15, 14, and 13. Let's move on. I've got Alonzo Menafield coming in at number 12. And honestly, if you had flipped 13 and 12 around in your rankings, Menafield and Jacoby, I wouldn't be mad at you. But thankfully, the UFC matchmaking is going to figure this one out for us because these two are slated to fight each other very soon. The winner will take the 12th spot. Loser will take the 13th on my list anyway. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Alonzo Menafield, he's looked pretty good as of late. In his last 5 fights, he's 3-1 and 1 draw. The draw, he did come back and get that win in the rematch, so, you know, it's justified there. Probably would have won that one, but got a point taken, so that's what happens. Cheated a little bit. If you're not cheating, you're not trying in the UFC. Anyway, Alonzo Menafield, for me, comes in at number 12. We're going to find out how 13 and 12 shake out very soon. Let's go to number 11, I have Khalil Roundtree, and the reason why, well, he got a win over Dustin Jacoby, even if a lot of people think that that win was unjustified, that you can't punish Khalil for what the judges have decided. That does go down in the books as a win for Khalil Roundtree. So for Roundtree, I've got him at 11 because he's got a win over number 13, and that puts him up there just a little bit higher, whether it be justified or not. I know a lot of people are going to be in the comments saying that they don't think that Khalil won that. Let me know. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think Dustin Jacoby actually beat Khalil Roundtree? If so, this would make sense, where you have 11 and 13 flip-flopped, or you got 11 down here and you just move Menafield and Jacoby up. either way, in these three, I could see that depending on how you felt about that, it goes that way. But on paper, Roundtree won, so we're going with Roundtree at number 11. Let's go to the next one. Now at number 10, I have Azamat Murzakanov. And much like 12 and 13, who are fighting each other, we have 11 and 10 who are fighting each other next as well. And what happens there is we'll find out where these two should fall in these rankings. So realistically, this whole 10 to 14 range, 10 to 13 range, sorry. The whole 10 to 13 range is going to be kind of decided very soon, because you got to assume that the two winners will occupy the 10 and 11, whereas the two losers in those fights will occupy 12 and 13. That's where I would assume, at least for my rankings. Now, we're assuming the UFC gave me the permission to fix these rankings. But for me, Azamat Murzakanov, sheer volume of wins, he's getting them. He's getting the wins he needs. He's got a win over Jacoby as well. So it's another situation where 10 and 11 both have a win over Jacoby. The last round didn't look that great for him, but he was able to get the win anyway. So for me, I've got Murzakanov at number 10. Let's move to number 9. This one was tough for me. I've got Volkan Ozdemir at number 9. And technically, he does have a win over someone that I have ranked above him. But this is more of a what have you done for me lately pick. So I've got him at 9 because, yes, he does have a win over someone that I have ahead of him. But that was quite some time ago. And recently, he's kind of been up and down. Now, he showed that he still has it. He's still that tough, grizzled veteran in his last matchup where he beat a UFC newcomer. You know, that's not the biggest win, but it keeps him in the rankings. It keeps him with a win, and I think it keeps him just above everyone we have 10 through 15, and that keeps him at number 9. So for me, Volkan Ozdemir is number 9. Let's find out number 8. Outside of the champion in the number 1 spot, this was actually the easiest one for me to place, and that's Anthony Smith at number 8. The reason I've got Anthony Smith at number 8 is, well, essentially he's beaten anyone that he's fought from down here and lost anybody he's fought from up here. So for me, it makes total sense to put Anthony Smith right here, and it seems interesting to me because the UFC actually also has Anthony Smith at number 8. So this is one we agree on. UFC ranking officials have actually got this one right. So Anthony Smith, number 8. I agree with them on this one. That's where he needs to be. But if you disagree, we've got this whole side figured out. We got 8 through 15. Let me know. Are we following on the same page so far, or are we a bit off? And let me know, and we can update it later after we get to number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to our next side of the board, going to number 7. Moving over to the other column, we have Alexander Rakic at number 7. And this one was a really tough one for me to place. A lot of this is just kind of what have you done for me lately, as I mentioned earlier with Ozdemir. Rakic, he hasn't fought in a while, obviously because he's injured. Or, you know, I think he's coming back soon, but he was injured. He has a loss to someone that I have up here, which kind of puts him here, right? But he's got a win over Anthony Smith, but he's also got a loss to Ozdemir. And for me, it's not like that loss, because it was a while ago, don't get me wrong. Not like that loss really brings him way down just for the fact that it's been a while ago. He's got some wins since then. But it makes it hard for me to put him like up here when he hasn't fought in quite some time. And he's kind of got, you know, there's some guys up here that have been doing good things since then, okay? Now for Rakic, though, he does have that win over Anthony Smith in that weird 3-round main event that we had quite a while back. So I didn't want to put him below Anthony Smith, so I got Rakic at 7. I wouldn't fault you if you put him kind of somewhere up here too, but like anything higher than number 5 I think is crazy because just there's other guys doing things more lately. So for me, Rakic sits at number 7. We can discuss it in the comments, though. I'd love to hear it. Let's move to number 6. Now, the UFC and I disagree on this one. I've got Jan Blachowicz coming in at number 6. And I have him above Rakic because, well, he beat Rakic. Although a lot of people are, you know, saying, well, it's because of the injury. Either way, he beat Rakic. So you got Blachowicz above Rakic, right? And that was pretty recent, right? That was Rakic's last fight. So fair enough. It was at least recent, in somewhat recent memory. But Blachowicz has been losing to this group, right? And there's no shame in that. This group is an elite group of fighters, but he just hasn't been able to get the wins there in recent memory. And although he's keeping it really close, right? Whether it be a draw, whether it be, you know, a slight loss on the scorecard where it was pretty close, he hasn't got the wins lately, and that's just kind of where he's at. So for me, Blachowicz falls at number 6. Again, it's one where, like, if you moved him 1 or maybe, if you moved him to number 5, I wouldn't be mad. I don't think he should quite make the top 4, but if you moved him to 5, I wouldn't be mad. But either way, I've got him at 6. It was a tough one to place. In fact, these two were both very tough to place, much harder than these. But it gets easier as we get to the top. But let's move on. Let's go to number 5. So next, I put Johnny Walker at number 5. And honestly, this one surprised me when I was writing this out because when I think of Johnny Walker, I think of him kind of like here, right? In this like 10 to 15 range in my head for whatever reason. But like on paper, he's better than that. He's got a win over number 8, Anthony Smith. He's got a win over number 15, Ryan Spann. In his last 5 fights, he's 3 wins, 1 loss to Jamal Hill, who we have at championship level here, the champion, even though he's vacated it, but the champion. And then he has a no contest to someone that I have up here, which could have been ruled a win via DQ, which would have boosted him up a bit as well. But it was a no contest. That's the official ruling. So we're keeping him right there at 5 for Johnny Walker. Now for Johnny Walker, like I said, it kind of surprised me too, because I picture him like over here when I think of him in my head, just like, oh, Johnny Walker, he's like, 10 to 15 range, maybe number 9. But I got him at number 5. Just the string of things. And like I said, this division is kind of in shambles. So we've got Johnny Walker at number 5, and that makes for an interesting top 5 in the light heavyweight division. This one confused me too, but if you stop and think about it, it's really hard to place him anywhere else. So that's where I'm at. Let's go to number 4. At number 4, I've got Nikita Krylov, and this is another one that kind of surprised me, right? He's on a 3-fight win streak, though, and since 2020, he has wins over 3 others that I have ranked below him, one being Ryan Spann, okay, number 15, one being Volkan Ozdemir, who I have at 9, and the other, back in 2020, being Johnny Walker. So 3 wins over guys that I also have ranked. Not to mention he's got a win over Alexander Gustafsson in that time, albeit it was kind of, old man Gustafsson. So take that for what you will. But Nikita Krylov has put together a pretty decent run in his recent memory, right? Like I said, coming in on a 3-fight win streak. So for me, Krylov ends up at 4. The win over, I actually originally had these two switched, which really confused the heck out of me. But when I was looking back at the records and I said, well, Krylov does have that win over Johnny Walker in 2020. I know that was like 3 years ago now, because here we are at 2023. But when it's razor thin margins between them, I go with the guy that got the win. So I'm going with Nikita Krylov at number 4 right now. But another one where these two could be flip-flopped. In fact, all 3 of these could be flip-flopped, and I wouldn't be mad at you. But let's move to number 3. We're getting into the nitty-gritty now. Let's find out where we have at number 3. Next, at number 3, I have Magomed Ankalaev. This is a weird one, too, because on one hand, you have, okay, Magomed Ankalaev. He's only got 1 loss in his career, and it was a last-second Hail Mary finish where he got submitted by Paul Craig. And he's beaten most of these guys here, but he's also winless in his last 2 fights, which is also strange that he's at number 3, right? But he had a draw against Jan Blachowicz, who's number 6, and he's got a no contest with Johnny Walker at number 5. Although that easily could have been a DQ, which would have really changed things. However, for Magomed Ankalaev, I've got him at 3. Like I said, he's got 1 loss in the career. He's got wins over a lot of these guys, and the Anthony Smith fight was another weird one, right? Because Anthony Smith broke his leg or something broke his foot or his leg or something like that. But Anthony Smith came out of the gate backing up Ankalaev. Ankalaev is willing to back up. That's what he likes to use his striking as like a counter striking sometimes and things like that. So he did get backed up. It's whatever. Right out of the gate, Smith came forward like a head of steam. And for a moment there, you were thinking, wow, Smith's doing something right. And then he breaks his ankle against Ankalaev, which is really funny how that works out. And then obviously Ankalaev gets to finish because, well, dude's on 1 leg, makes sense. But because of that, so it's kind of a weird finish, but he did get the win. And then you also got a draw and then a no contest after that. It's just kind of, he's had a weird last 3 fights, right? So I've got Magomed Ankalaev at number 3, and I probably will catch some flack from those people that say that he's the future champion, he's the best guy in the division. But then also, it's one of those, what have you done for me lately? Well, you haven't won a fight in your last 2 fights, so it's hard for me to put you any higher. So I've got him at number 3, but I can understand both sides where he shouldn't be very high or he should be really high. I get it. Let's go to the top 2, though, because this should be interesting, and I think you guys are going to probably hate my picks. It's fine. I can already see the comment now. 138 MMA, what are you thinking? Why is Alex Pereira already at number 2 when he's only had 1 fight at light heavyweight, and it's only 1 win? Guys, I understand. I realize that doesn't make a ton of sense because he's only got 1 win at light heavyweight in the UFC. But it is over Jan Blachowicz, who I have at number 6. It was a close fight, but he beat the guy that I have at number 6. And I believe the UFC has him at number 4 or something like that. So for me, it's a big win. Also, he is fighting for a championship very soon. So there's that too. When you look at his middleweight resume as well, he has finish wins, knockout wins, over the only other two middleweight champions in the last however long. That's Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. He knocked out both of them. Now, sure, he got knocked out by Adesanya as well, but they're 1-1 against each other in the UFC. He does hold the knockout win over him. So a knockout win over one of the best, if not the best, middleweight of all time, a knockout win over the current middleweight champion, and a win, even though it was close, in a decision over Jan Blachowicz. I've got to put him at number 2, especially with the fact that he is fighting for the light heavyweight championship of the world coming up very soon at UFC 295. So for me, I've got Alex Pereira at number 2. If he gets absolutely beat pillar to post in that matchup, he'll drop significantly just due to the lack of light heavyweight experience. But let's find out number 1, and I bet you can probably already guess who that is. So light heavyweight essentially has 2 champions that have both vacated their belts. So whoever you believe to be the rightful champion, you could basically flip these 2 around, because Yuri Prochazka has to be my number 1. Even though I do think it's kind of weird that he's number 1 and Jamal Hill is still listed as champion when both of them vacated their championship kind of the same way. They won the title and then didn't get to defend it and just had to vacate it. So it's very strange. Now, when Yuri Prochazka fights Alex Pereira, you know that he's probably going to be in the championship corner, basically. You know, they're going to have him in the red corner, which is where the champion is. He's going to walk out second because it makes sense, right? He was the champion. He had to relinquish the belt because he got hurt. Jamal Hill is listed as the champion, so I have him there. But if you say, okay, I want Yuri Prochazka to be the champion, I feel like since he relinquished the belt first, whatever, you can flip these 2 around, and I think that makes sense because either one of these guys is rightfully number 1, the other is rightfully the champion. Neither of them lost their belt. That's how it goes. Both of them also beat Glover Teixeira for the belt, so you can't even go off of that. You can't even go off, oh, they beat somebody else in the rankings. They both beat the same guy for the title. So that's what we've got. I've got Yuri Prochazka at number 1, but thankfully we're going to get to find out real quick between these 2 at UFC 295. It's coming up soon, and that's where we're going to find out who the champion is, which will bump Jamal Hill down to number 1, and the loser of this matchup will be at number 2, and the winner will obviously be champion. That's how that's going to shake out. We're going to see some changes here. Guys, I wanted to do this video, and real quick, before I get into my explanation, please like this video if you haven't already. I do appreciate that. It does help the channel a lot. But I wanted to do this video because, as I mentioned it in a live stream the other day, my girlfriend pointed out to me that she isn't a MMA fan, first off. So the light heavyweight division is kind of confusing for someone who doesn't follow the sport as well as some of the fans watching this channel right now. But for someone that's just kind of a casual fan, watches the pay-per-views, but doesn't watch every fight night, doesn't check up all the news stories, things like that, which is kind of where my girlfriend falls in that camp. She watches all the pay-per-views with me. She'll watch some fight nights, not all of them. So for someone like that, where they're like, wait, hold on, who in the world is the light heavyweight champion? Because I don't remember anybody winning the championship from any of the champions. Well, it gets confusing. And when you look at the rankings, you think, what in the world is going on here? Because the UFC rankings are all over the place. It's probably the weakest division as far as rightfully being in the top 5 of any division outside of women's featherweight in the entire UFC. So I wanted to do this video to give you my take on where I think it would be. And if the UFC decided to hire me based off of this, well, I could really fix some of the other divisions as well. Hey, if you want to see that, drop it in the comments below. Let me know if you want to see me rank the other divisions. But this one really needed it. So that's what we've got. We've got the light heavyweight division. We've got the championship fight coming up soon. And Jamal Hill likely is fighting the winner of that. It just makes sense. So, like I said, like the video on your way out. I appreciate it very much. Check out all the links in the description for all the stuff. I'll see you guys soon.